All right, that was a video of public. Yes, over to you, Deepat.
Thank you. Thanks to MMA and Monica and Rudra to put together this panel, and thank you to all the panelists to make it on Karwa Chauth Day as well. And I'm really happy I have three ladies in the panel, and coming here, I'm sure a lot of planning and logistics must have gone behind making sure that you guys are here with so much going on in your own lives. Thank you. And thanks, Kushal, for being the token male member. So, yeah, but yeah, it's very, in very rare moments when we have these token male member kind of panels, and I'm really glad to have this sort of a panel and speaking to such insightful and kind of experienced folks. So starting out, I think setting stage after, I think, probably 2019, when digitization really took a big shape in India, both opportunities in India as well as people where they want to stay, where they are finding their earning potential, where companies are investing, has started moving beyond, let's say, metros in the tier 1, tier 2 cities, right? And that is creating a new consumer class, which some people would call the vernacular user, some people would call it the regional user, and they are not in the metro cities. They are more connected to their traditions, to their local cultures, and hence it requires the marketeers also to kind of evolve how they are speaking to those customers. And the biggest, let's say, beautiful thing about India is that when you are trying to connect with traditions, there are thousands of those, right? Like across regions. So I would like if all of you can like take 1 minute to kind of introduce yourselves, your brands, and how you are kind of speaking to those 1,000 cultures that are out there while you are evolving your brand presence in this regional consumer that is emerging. So maybe we can start with Soma.
So this is Somashri. Hi, everyone, and thanks for taking time out this afternoon. I have been with Godrej Consumer Products for about 20 years. I signed off as the CMO over there, and then over the last 2.5, 3 years, I have been with Marico. Over the time, one of the things we realized as marketeers was that, you know, India is not really one country. It's actually many Indias. So one of the things was for us to win in many Indias, because both Godrej as well as Marico have been powerhouse brands which cater to every sort of consumer. I mean, between these two brands, I'm sure 100% of Indian households were covered. But the relative brand strength, for example, the strength of one brand in one state would not be the same as the other state. And hence all our strategies had to be customized for that brand, for that particular local regional state. And that's how we ensured that in both these companies, the leadership status, most of the brands were either the number 1 or the number 2 player.
Yeah, Pooja, you want to go next?
Hi, everyone. Please pardon my voice. Been down with fever and cold. But I'm Pooja. I head the marketing for Tata Motors passenger EV business. Apart from that, I also look after the communications and media for entire Tata Motors passenger vehicles business. Like FMCG, I also come from Unilever, spent 17 years with Unilever, then some stint in Paytm, and then I've been with Tata Motors. And the learning of FMCG is what we are trying to apply on Tata Motors as well. And like winning in many Indias, we also have something called as win by product and win by market. So each product is specifically catered, and the communication is specially catered to a particular market. And that's what we try to do. So while we do have things which go on scale, but how do you personalize your message to the consumer in not only just tier 1, but the tier 2 and the tier 3 cities for car buyers is something that we look at. Yeah. So that's about us.
Thank you. Richa, do you want to go next?
Hey, hi, my name is Richa. I currently work at Schneider Electric. I'm the Global Social Media Director here. So I work across countries. So we are a large brand. Schneider operates in multiple countries. I've previously spent time at Amazon and also in food retail at KFC, Yum Brands. So I've seen the very interesting journey on how even global brands have to go as local to really tap into the heartlands of India. And like you said, India is many Indias. So it's interesting to see how even bigger, very, very large brands have to not just localize distribution channels, but really think about markets in a very hyper-local way sometimes. So it varies across the spectrum. Food retail is a place which is very driven by taste and local flavors and local nuances. So it's, even the consumer research then talks back to the product pipeline, and the products are developed in line with those local nuances. If I were to really say how the global to local product translation happens, that again is, happening at a country level. So I think many, many factors at play, even for large brands.
Yeah. Thank you. And Kushal, do you please?
I think we loved using this word Bharat in multiple ways in the last couple of years. And I think fundamentally for many of us who spend enough time going back to being with, I think, people in villages or having families in smaller cities and towns. And I can say that also because I play a large role also at the government's initiative at Niti Aayog, is that, with due respect to, what companies like Unilever and all the companies that you all have been on, ma'am, and Godrej or whatever as well, the actual Bharat which lives really even in those smallest of villages of less than 100 people, or 200 people, is something that perhaps no marketer will understand. Because that person there does not even know what a 5-star chocolate is, does not necessarily know what Lay's is. And for him, that chip is perhaps what is easily available there, which is perhaps Balaji in some area, which is perhaps some other brand in some other market. And that really is the true opportunity, I think, because the fact is that same consumer in that rural village post the pandemic has suddenly, because of digital, has become more aspirational, has become more thoughtful of what he wants to wear, what he wants to consume, what he wants to eat, and pretty much everything. Obviously, all the companies want a land grab of this sort of piece of the pie, and they're trying. But the hard reality is that today, even a Unilever, only for the cost of the economics of how it functions, will not go and distribute to a village sub 500 pure because it doesn't make mathematical sense. So which means that if marketers need to speak to that person there, I think therefore the opportunity of digital through channels like YouTube and many others, which are sort of pervasive in that sense, is of essence and of value. And I think perhaps regionalization, and not just regionalization in terms of language, but in fact getting down to understanding nuances of even the texture or the tone of voice is so critical. And that tone of voice will not come in any manner through any fascinating AI. Believe you me, with all the possible discussion we have around, I think, AI will be the next thing to sort of solve and, make things, yes, in multiple ways, perhaps, yes, but that local dialect of someone in a particular person in UP is going to be very, very different from someone even just, literally in the same UP, maybe about 100 kilometers away from there.
Absolutely. A brief introduction about you also for the audience.
Sure. My name is Kushal Sangvi. I currently am the Chief Revenue Officer of iCube's Wire, and I play other roles. Like I mentioned, I'm also sort of very closely involved with government initiatives across at Niti Aayog. I started something called the Indian Influencer Governing Council a couple of months ago this year as well. So that's me.
Okay. So about me, I'm the co-founder and CEO of InShots and Public. InShots is a brand that I think a lot of the crowd in the audience would have in their phones. But we launched another app called in 2019 called Public, which is a hyper-local social media. And as of today, we have 70 million monthly active users on the platform. And the reason I feel we have been able to gain that is kind of stitching together from something that all of you have kind of commented on. regional dialects, like we have 30, 40 kind of languages, but we have 1500 dialects that are spoken in India, right? And hence, content creators, local content creators, when they speak and create content and videos, informative videos about people, about their localities, about their neighborhoods in those dialects, the connect that the platform establishes is like next level, right? So connection wins, AI loses is what we are going to rely on. And so this takes me to the next question. So as part of our public survey, which we did, where we got about 4.3 lakh respondents across districts, across states in India, one question that kind of we tried to focus on was festive behavior and different aspects of festive behavior, especially with the GST announcement. I think a lot of consumers are celebrating. So let me take this opportunity to start with Richa. Richa, so basically in our survey, what we got was that quality and value for money are the two top purchase factors, especially for home and home electronics kind of category and home kind of category, right? So versus, let's say, just a big brand or a name of a big brand, right? Like just because you're aware and a brand is big or the brand equity is big doesn't mean that it'll translate into quality and value for money. So how can brands use regional media, social media, influencers when they are talking to these tier 2, tier 3 consumers, when quality and value for money is the big consideration factor?
Yeah, I think the answer to that lies in obviously consumer trust, and it's really, really about resonance versus broad reach that typical media vehicles get you. So I think it's really boiling down to some meaningful connections through relevance and, like I said, resonance. So resonance anytime over reach. I think that's broadly the theme. In terms of what works and why it works, I think trust is not given, it's earned, right? So I am likely to trust somebody in my circle and then make a buying decision, right? So it could be my friends, it could be my family, or probably one of the trusted influencers or the trusted voice that I follow. So, right, brands really have this large opportunity to be those kind of vehicles, but it comes in a slightly long-term fashion. So winning in tier 2, 3 markets is really a bit of a long-term game. It's not like an overnight phenomena because you really have to align with their values, talk the language, work with some of those very, very local creators, get into those nuances and then create that kind of community. So it doesn't work typically like the broad reach that we see around. So having said that, like I said, trust is earned. So brands which are absolutely able to do that well over a long period of time are certainly winning. I'll take an example of food retail. I spent many years in food retail. And we were actually launching a very interesting product called leg piece bucket at KFC. Now this really came from the consumer insight where people would walk into the store and say, Bhaiya, just give me the leg piece, like don't give me any other pieces, because leg piece is actually the most favorite for a lot of people. So we actually created a bucket which had a leg, it was called a leg piece bucket, by the way. So then we took it to multiple markets, and the way we took it to different markets was also very different. So for Bangalore as a region, which is very large for us, we went to a Danish Seth who was, I'm talking a couple of years back, so I mean, he came in pretty easily, at that time. So, and then for Kolkata, we worked with a bunch of different influencers, and we tied into a lot of those local food communities who could be the trusted voices for people to try a brand, out.
Very interesting. And I think leg pieces are indeed our favorite. And there needs to be some research around why that is. But coming to, given that you also talk about food retail, the next question is for Somastri. So you have spent so much time in CPG as a category, right? And one interesting insight that we kind of unearthed in our survey was that 40% of the segment are still are saying that they are inclined to do a last minute purchase, even for categories like beyond food, like clothing and gifting also, right? So given that there is so much last minute kind of demand, like in India, even elections are so unpredictable, right? So how does the right from product, inventory, placement, pricing, packaging, given that the decision is going to be last minute, like, so how do you incorporate and kind of, and then there is the variety of regional nuances, kind of playing all the, bringing in all the volatility at like what product will get picked from the shelf, what will not be. So how do you kind of bring this all together while you are planning something like a festive month or a festive quarter?
See, the best part is it all stems from consumer behavior as to why this last minute thing is suddenly sort of happening. One is the ecosystem helping us, and secondly is the behavior. Just in the audience, I mean, it would be great to understand how many of our parents used to start packing for a vacation 1 month in advance. And before we start traveling, how many days or maybe hours that we start packing, right? Even that behavior has become like last minute. And given that behavior change, what we are also seeing is that the shopping behavior has also become that, and the ecosystem is helping. Today, the e-com, not just the e-com, because even that could be a day or so here unless you are a Prime member, etc. It is the QCom which is changing our behavior, and we know that in FMCG, QCom is growing the fastest. So one is the consumer behavior change and the encouragement they are getting from the ecosystem that's sort of helping this kind of behavior. Now, how as brands we plan is, see, this is not a sudden development, it's been happening over the years. And it's not just the festive season that drives it. There are also other seasonal factors which summer, rain, winter, I mean suddenly intense winter starts and you rush for the woolens, you rush for the moisturizing creams, etc., right? So as marketeers, we use a lot of AI, we use a lot of predictive tools, analytical tools to kind of help us predict that kind of behavior, because you know when the festive season is going to be there, you know when the wedding season is going to be there, and mota seasons you are pretty much, you know, guessing it here and there. Though this year I think even Met department has gone all over the place. So that is how marketeers, we use those predictive tools and plan out our production, plan out our plans for the festive gifting, etc.
Understood. Just one quick follow-up question. So any kind of brand equity building is more strategic, and I'm sure that doesn't get impacted by these seasonal nuances. Is that true, or like how do you, every year how do you kind of move your brand equity playbook, especially with those regional insights in mind? Because as you said, like the seasons are also different in different parts of India, right? And more and more climate change is kind of impacting those conversations.
Yeah, so typically what we do is, like, we know what are the festivals. Like, for example, Onam will be important in some part of the country, while Makar Sankranti in some other part. And for example, even the religious festivals, you know, in different parts of the country behave differently. So we will have a different package in terms of product and communication, let's say for UP Eid. Or we'll have a complete different package for, let's say, in fact, the most important festival that's coming in, while it's Diwali, but in Maharashtra, there is that particular Abhyang Snan that happens, right? Which is a very region specific. So over there, then you look at local influencers, you look at local regional channels to reach out to the consumer with a regional message. Now, I can't play that Abhyang Snan creative in Bengal. It means nothing to them.
Absolutely.
So I have to customize with the need of the consumer for that particular event where the brand fits in.
Absolutely. This brings me to Pooja. So basically, ultimately, for anything that is climate, right? The only real solution that's right now working is electric vehicles is the answer to everything climate as of today. So actually, there was an interesting insight that we got, was that there is a difference in the way different regions are preferring four-wheelers and the category of four-wheelers, which means that there are different regional preferences who are trying to, some regions are trying to adopt electric vehicles faster and some not so much, right? So for example, we saw that Himachal Pradesh across all regions was the top electric vehicle preference state. Then it was Telangana, and overall percentage was 15%. So they were at 20%. So what is driving this variation across regions in terms of attitudes towards getting an electric vehicle? Is it mostly infrastructure or some other factors as well at play here?
So, yeah, not everything leads to electric vehicles when you talk about climate change and sustainability. But yes, they are better vehicles than your petrol, ICE vehicles, which are there. But the important part for electric vehicles is habit change, right? And that's a bigger issue that's there for us to solve for. And it's typically for an FMCG company as well, right? So if you draw a parallel when you look at soups, etc., which come in new in the market, it takes time for it to develop. And even more so in vehicles because A, it is a considered purchase, B, it's an expensive purchase. And C, the most important thing is, do I have the ecosystem available for me to be using this tension-free, right? So for example, right now we have petrol pumps almost a kilometer away. Every 500 meter, you would have a mechanic who knows how to work on an ICE vehicle. Even the way you drive your car in electric is a little different because you need to know how do you optimize your battery, right, for the best driving experience. So I'm quite surprised with Himachal Pradesh, but not so much with the South, because South is one of the places where electric vehicles adoption is much faster. Gujarat is another place where electric adoption is much faster. And the most important thing is that those governments have built the ecosystem for the consumer to be there. So if you go to Gujarat, you will find an Ahmedabad, Surat on the highways. You'll find a lot of mega chargers which are coming. In fact, we've launched 3 mega chargers in the last couple of months, which are there. So it's important to build that ecosystem for the consumer to be, a little risk-free when they are driving, because it's not that 10% battery ho gayi to aap gaadi chhod doge, So it's important with the ecosystem. The other thing that the government also did was boost the adoption. So a lot of Maharashtra had a subsidy on electric vehicles, right, and passenger electric vehicles. So the government is also building a lot of ecosystem for us. So when a habit change happens, it's just not about the product, but it is the ecosystem that needs to work with it.
Yeah.
And
maybe in Himachal, what we saw was that there is a lot of solar adoption in general in
Absolutely,
households, and that is what is leading to
in
higher
fact,
appetite.
for that also, if you look at it, we do collaborate with our sister company, which is Tata Power, and in fact, even a rupee or 2 rupees that you spend for charging an electric vehicle goes away when you have a solar rooftop, right? And that's one of the biggest things. Again, Gujarat is another place where solar has been adopted very, very actively. And then the economics make much more sense.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's what happens. So, like we said, it is the ecosystem which helps you build that habit change that is required when you're looking at an EV adoption.
Absolutely.
In fact, now in Mumbai, if you look at it, you can charge your EVs, every 500 to a kilometer away. You get either a public charger or, the societies would have the charger as well.
Absolutely. So last question, Kushal, for you. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but one thing that we've seen is that creators and influencers, which is a category that you guys are actively working on, there is this issue of sometimes brand safety versus cultural connect, right? Like, so how do you help brands or make those decisions about brand safety versus cultural connect? Because if you go too wide, like talking to probably 1,000 influencers, it's very difficult to manage brand safety, versus if you are too selective, then you are not diversifying your cultural connection with different kinds of audiences. So what's the right playbook that you've seen brands kind of evolve into?
So if you're talking about a consumer who is in these very smaller towns, villages, talukas and districts, for him the influencer is perhaps coming out from multiple channels, which speaks to him, I think, in his dialect and his sort of tone of voice makes him feel comfortable, gives him a sense of belonging and closeness and those things. Now, think about the fact, to be honest, that I think the consumer empathizes with that tone of voice and how that person is communicating with him. It may not necessarily mean that I think the way that the influencer perhaps I think reaches out to him in a certain thematic, in a certain approach, may not necessarily be in how we define brand safety in our defined ways of modern marketing. So what we have to sometimes step back is that brand safety is something which is a checkbox perhaps for a lot of new age marketers, but try and speak to someone who's selling a Me Too of Vicks, who's a small FMCG company selling into people in some cold terrain. Now he is not even going to understand this whole term called brand safety. Yeah. So I think where we need to understand is that they may not necessarily always be that holy matrimony in terms of I think the marketer's terminology, but I think brand safety essentially means speaking the truth, speaking the right things, the product and benefits of that product and service for that audience pretty well in the tone of voice that he wants to listen to him. And if you check those check boxes, the same brand safety guideline would apply perhaps for Procter & Gamble Vicks to Me Too Vicks selling out in those markets as well. So I think to answer your question, they are obviously following those things as well. And let's face it, I think influencers are getting smart today as well. They know exactly what works, what checks, and pretty much they're sort of up with it.
Absolutely. And I think one thing as a platform that we stand for on public, because the first question was that how do you make this fake news issue kind of solve? How do you solve the fake news issue? One stand we took was, and actually the Constitution of India helped us there, that there is freedom of speech for everybody in the country, but it is not for bots. So you need to give freedom of speech, but first you need to tell us and prove to us that you are a real human and you are a citizen of India, right? So identification became the cornerstone of all creators on public. In fact, we are the only social media platform in the country where all creators are verified creators. And we have 4 levels of verification. So there's a gray tick, there is a green tick, there is a blue tick, and then there's a blue-white tick, depending on the position of authority and the influence that you carry in society or otherwise. So that brings me to the closing comments from all of you based on whatever we discussed. Any comments? We can start from right from the other end. Pooja?
No, so I think a couple of things which stood out and something that we need to look at. Of course, each consumer is unique, each region is unique. So how do you make sure that your brands reach and speak the same tonality to that consumer? Because you have to be in the environment where the consumer is. The second is habit creation takes time, so be patient, and it will, see fruit. There will be an inflection point which will come in, and then there is no stopping. The third part is about influencers and what you just spoke about. It is important to be authentic. It is important to be not bought. And actually relate to the consumer in the language that he wants to hear. And that's where the influencers help you with the might of that connect that they can get. So use influencers wisely, but they are important these days for anything from an Vicks to an EV to be sold, right? So it's the next game where it is so hyper local and personalized that you should use that to your advantage.
Yeah. Somashri?
Just adding to what she's saying, without trying to be repetitive, I think is that as marketeers, we have to be very, very open and very clearly see what are the changing trends that are happening. And thanks to the whole dint of digital, one thing or one creative or one idea fits all doesn't work anymore. And hence how this new generation is thinking, working, and at different pockets of the country, how they're working and what media are they consuming. for us it's important to understand, know that, nuance our communication and reach out to them in the most relevant way possible is what I would say.
Richard.
Yeah. Two quick takeaways from me. So I think both from the consumer side, I definitely want to be associated or consumer brand which talks to me, which means authenticity is super important. And from the perspective of the brand, how do you really make sure that you show up in the most authentic way, but really keeping your brand ethos at the center, because it really all ties back to who you are as a brand, right? You could be slightly different in terms of nuances in different regions, but really keeping the brand ethos at the heart of it, and then making those connections with creators, those local voices. It really has to talk back to the core brand ethos. Otherwise, it just does not look authentic, and consumers can see through it. So that's
Authenticity
important.
and connection, I think, is the cornerstone.
Yeah.
Kushal, any last comments?
I just think that this is going to be a very, very interesting space in time to come. And I'm only going to leave, I think, thoughts for all in the room, because I think 2025 made us see some brilliant work which happened only at platforms like Mahakumbh. At Smarties alone, we've seen a fair amount of some of the best companies putting out some very creative work there as well, which means that I think this is an untapped space that I think fundamentally you can, I think, really do not just creative storytelling, but you can put ideas coming alive. You can, I think, weave into that mass of people. How would you ever thought that 6,000 crore would be spent on Mahakumbh in advertising? How many people ever thought that the same 6 would be 8,000 crore being spent on Pujo in West Bengal? Which means that opportunity is actually in some of these, and just count the number of festivals, cultural differences that we have amongst this whole community, what we call Bharat, and we'll realize that I think advertising has a new language. Marketing will, I think, have nothing more to sort of feel much better than saying that, yes, let's do something really cool and let's make celebration of Bharat come alive.
Absolutely. And one thing that is our motto in public that we say internally, but it's not yet our tagline, is that public hai, wo sab janti hai. So yeah, delving into public's insights and what they are telling us and listening keenly to them is very, very important as well. Thank you. Thanks to all the panelists to make time out today. And thanks, Monica, for putting this together. Thank you.